Kaelen Strivor, Brenna Korr, Saphira Lonett, Zephyr Ardan, and Nirel Kaith were all talented, ambitious, and dedicated to their work, but their brilliance made them targets. From quiet offices to bustling factories, high-tech labs, and hospital corridors, each of them faced colleagues whose envy, obsession, and need for control escalated into deadly violence. What began as routine workdays ended in tragedy, revealing chilling secrets behind everyday professional life. These are the 5 workplace murders that shocked their industries and left investigators struggling to comprehend how ambition and jealousy can turn ordinary workplaces into deadly arenas. Kaelen Strivor had always been the kind of employee who commanded attention without trying. Her drive, intelligence, and charm made her a rising star in the marketing department, and colleagues admired her work ethic. But admiration, Kaelen soon realized, had a shadow. Marlo Vane, a co-worker with equal ambition but a quieter presence, had started to show signs of envy. The tension between them was subtle at first. Interrupted presentations, critical remarks disguised as advice, and small but repeated attempts to undermine Kaelen's accomplishments. No one outside the department noticed, but inside, the atmosphere had begun to thicken with silent rivalry. In the weeks leading up to the incident, the office environment grew increasingly tense. Kaelen's assistant, Leora Dex, observed small details that hinted at danger. Files moved without explanation, personal items slightly displaced, and strange late-night office hours logged under Marlo's name. Leora tried to warn Kaelen, but Kaelen was focused on her upcoming campaign launch, believing the signs were nothing more than workplace competitiveness. The campaign was critical to her promotion, and she refused to let minor conflicts distract her. The morning of the murder started like any other. Kaelen arrived early, coffee in hand, ready to finalize the presentation. She was meticulous in her routine, reviewing notes, checking email threads, and making sure every detail aligned perfectly. But as the day progressed, unusual things began to happen. Documents she had been working on vanished temporarily from her workstation. Her computer experienced intermittent glitches, forcing her to restart multiple times. These disruptions, small individually, began to stack into an unsettling pattern. Marlo Vane had been seen moving purposefully through the office that morning, appearing calm but deliberate. She avoided direct confrontation with Kaelen, choosing instead to manipulate situations subtly. By late afternoon, Kaelen was tired but determined, finishing last-minute changes to her presentation. Leora noticed Marlo lingering near the office supply room, ostensibly retrieving materials, but the timing seemed calculated. Leora felt a deep unease, sensing that Marlo's intentions were far from innocent. The turning point came in the early evening. The office was nearly empty, only essential staff remained. Security cameras would later confirm Marlo's movements, but at the moment, no one suspected the danger. Kaelen, focused on her work, barely noticed the footsteps approaching. Within minutes, the careful buildup of envy and resentment escalated into action. Marlo struck with precision, ensuring that the scene would be discovered only after the act was complete. When Kaelen was found later that evening, she was motionless at her desk, her work abandoned, and the office seemed frozen in disbelief. Investigators pieced together the sequence of events with methodical detail. Forensic evidence indicated that the attack had been deliberate and controlled. The timing, the choice of location, and the absence of witnesses suggested premeditation. Emails, computer logs, and subtle manipulations were all part of a strategy to isolate Kaelen, create opportunities, and execute the crime without interference. Leora's observations became crucial evidence, revealing how small behaviors over weeks had indicated an escalating threat. The motive, though rooted in jealousy, revealed a deeper psychological pattern. Marlowe's ambition, combined with an inability to tolerate Kaelen's success, had created an internal obsession that ultimately turned deadly. What began as workplace rivalry escalated into murder, demonstrating how unchecked envy and personal vendettas can transform a professional environment into a stage for tragedy. By the time authorities pieced together the evidence, the office had already become a chilling reminder that danger often lurks behind the most ordinary facades, hidden in the quiet rivalry between colleagues. Brenna Korr had always been known for her precision and dedication on the factory floor. Her skills as a machinist made her invaluable, and her colleagues respected her work ethic. She was careful, methodical, and quietly confident in her abilities. But in the shadows of the production lines, tension was growing. Daxon Vire, the factory foreman, had always been known for his temper and authoritarian style. While he commanded respect through experience, there was a simmering resentment toward those who outshone him. Brenna's expertise, efficiency, and recognition from management became a constant source of irritation for Daxon, though he rarely expressed it openly. In the weeks leading to the incident, co-workers noticed unusual behavior from Daxon. He would linger near Brenna's station, watching her work more intently than necessary, sometimes hovering over machines without reason. Occasionally, he would subtly alter machine settings, claiming adjustments were routine, but the timing often coincided with Brenna's tasks. Small incidents, like misplacing tools or delaying critical supplies, seemed minor at first, but patterns began to emerge. The careful observer could see a deliberate campaign to undermine her performance and create a sense of instability in her routine. Brenna, focused on her responsibilities, noticed some of the oddities, but attributed them to operational errors or mechanical issues. She prided herself on problem solving and rarely sought outside attention. Her focus was on meeting quotas and maintaining precision, unaware that Daxon's quiet hostility was evolving into something far more dangerous. Torrin Hale, a colleague who often worked alongside Brenna, began to sense the tension escalating. He noticed Daxon's gaze lingering too long, his impatience flaring in moments of routine frustration. Torrin documented subtle anomalies, from minor machine malfunctions to abrupt changes in production orders, but no one anticipated the stakes would rise to lethal levels. The day of the tragedy began like any other, with the hum of machinery and the rhythmic pounding of metals shaping components. Brenna approached her tasks with the same care and focus she always displayed. Daxon, unusually quiet in the morning, appeared to be supervising the line more closely than usual. Small interactions grew increasingly strained. By afternoon, Brenna had noticed irregularities in one of the machines she operated. A component had been misaligned, slowing the production process. When she attempted to correct it, Daxon was present, offering assistance that caused a dangerous malfunction. The tension between them, once subtle, became a tangible force pressing down on everyone in the immediate vicinity. Later, during the shift's final hours, the incident occurred. A mismanaged press and deliberate misalignment caused an accident that would prove fatal. Brenna was caught off guard, unable to avoid the machinery, and suffered injuries that resulted in her death. Investigators later determined that the malfunction was not an accident. Evidence suggested Daxon had manipulated equipment in a way that left no room for error. Security footage, witness testimonies, and forensic analysis revealed patterns consistent with premeditated harm rather than a routine industrial mishap. The investigation uncovered deeper motivations behind the act. Daxon's resentment toward Brenna had grown into obsession, fueled by fear of being outshone and losing control over his domain. What began as subtle sabotage escalated into a deadly confrontation. Torrin Hale's observations and notes became critical evidence, demonstrating that Daxon's hostility had been building over weeks, each small act of interference a stepping stone toward tragedy. The incident revealed how environments that appear routine and safe can hide dangerous personal vendettas. showing that workplace rivalries sometimes mask lethal intentions. By the time authorities pieced together the evidence, the factory floor had already become a grim reminder that ambition and jealousy, when combined with authority and access, could create conditions where fatal outcomes are not only possible, but inevitable. Brenna's death was more than a tragic accident. It was the culmination of months of manipulation, resentment, and control, leaving colleagues haunted by what they had failed to see and a community shaken by the deadly consequences of workplace envy. Saphira Lonett had always been meticulous with numbers. As a financial analyst, she prided herself on detecting the smallest discrepancies in company accounts. Her colleagues admired her precision, and her supervisors trusted her judgment. But in the upper echelons of the company, shadows lurked where trust was supposed to exist. Kaelen Strivor, the CFO, had long been hiding irregularities in the company's finances. While outwardly professional and composed, his desperation to conceal embezzlement had created a fragile bubble of fear. Saphira's integrity and sharp eye made her a threat he could no longer tolerate. The first signs of trouble appeared subtly. Saphira noticed minor inconsistencies in reports that didn't add up. Transactions that were slightly off, missing documentation, and unexpected adjustments began to appear more frequently. She approached her team discreetly, verifying her suspicions without raising alarms. Meanwhile, Kaelen grew increasingly aware of her investigation, his calm demeanor hiding an escalating panic. He had always relied on charm and authority to keep people in line, but Saphira's persistence threatened to unravel everything he had carefully constructed. Weeks before the murder, Saphira began keeping detailed records of the anomaly she discovered. Each note, each printed transaction was carefully cataloged. Her diligence did not go unnoticed by Kaelen, who monitored her activities with growing concern. Security footage and access logs later revealed that he would occasionally enter areas she frequented, ostensibly for work, but likely to gauge the progress of her findings. His anxiety was evident in subtle behaviors, hesitant movements, abrupt gestures, and moments of forced calm during meetings. On the day of the murder, Saphira had prepared a presentation highlighting suspicious financial activities for a small internal review. She intended to bring the discrepancies to her supervisor's attention, unaware that Kaelen had decided to eliminate the threat permanently. He approached the situation with calculated precision, ensuring no immediate witnesses could interfere. While outwardly composed during the morning briefing, his movements suggested a meticulous plan in motion. He had spent days analyzing timing, access points, and staff rotations to minimize the chance of discovery. His anxiety was evident in subtle behaviors, hesitant movements, abrupt gestures, and moments of forced calm during meetings. As the workday progressed, Saphira remained focused on her task, double-checking reports and arranging supporting documentation. Kaelen took advantage of a moment when she was alone in the office to act. He struck quickly, ensuring that the encounter left little chance for resistance or escape. When she was discovered later, forensic evidence confirmed that the attack had been deliberate and controlled, consistent with someone who had planned the act in advance rather than reacting impulsively. Security footage captured fleeting moments of his presence near her workspace, and emails sent on the morning of the incident corroborated his attempt to manipulate routines. Investigators later reconstructed the series of steps that led to Saphira's death. Kaelen had systematically eliminated safeguards that could have alerted others, tampered with schedules, and created diversions to ensure she would be isolated. His obsession with maintaining power and concealing misconduct drove him to commit a crime that transformed an ordinary office into a scene of calculated violence. Every detail, from the sequence of entry to the timing of the attack, suggested premeditation, revealing a level of planning that shocked colleagues and law enforcement alike. The aftermath exposed a chilling reality. Corporate ambition, when combined with corruption and fear, could escalate into deadly outcomes. Saphira's diligence had unintentionally painted a target on her back, illustrating the danger faced by those who confront powerful individuals. Her death became a haunting example of how integrity and ambition, when clashing with desperation and greed, could lead to tragedy in the most controlled environments.
Zephyr Ardan was a gifted software engineer whose talent for innovation made him indispensable in the tech lab where he worked. His ideas often propelled the company forward, earning him recognition among peers and management alike. But excellence sometimes breeds resentment, and in Zephyr's case, it attracted the dangerous attention of Corvin Jacks, the lead developer. Corvin had long viewed Zephyr's rising reputation as a threat to his authority and position, and over time, quiet envy had grown into a dangerous fixation. Subtle conflicts and professional disagreements escalated in ways that few outside the lab could fully understand. In the weeks leading to the incident, colleagues began noticing unusual tension between the two men. Zephyr would find his code altered without explanation, and minor technical disruptions seemed to follow him. Corvin maintained an outwardly professional demeanor, but his presence became increasingly oppressive. He lingered near Zephyr's workstation, scrutinizing every keystroke and decision. Even small interactions carried an undercurrent of hostility, and interns like Illyra's son sensed that the lab environment was becoming toxic. The atmosphere, once collaborative and creative, was now charged with unspoken threats. The day of the tragedy unfolded quietly, with only the lab staff present. Zephyr was engrossed in developing a complex algorithm, unaware of the precise calculations Corvin had made to orchestrate the fatal encounter. Corvin had studied Zephyr's routines meticulously, observing patterns in work habits, break times, and access points to restricted equipment. Every small observation was used to engineer an opportunity for confrontation that would leave no room for escape. What appeared to outsiders as normal work activity was in fact the culmination of weeks of planning, carefully disguised under a veneer of routine. As Zephyr worked, subtle disruptions began. A critical line of code was altered remotely, creating a minor but persistent error that required immediate attention. Corvin entered the lab under the pretense of offering assistance, positioning himself to take advantage of the distraction. The tension escalated rapidly, unnoticed by anyone else in the room, as the engineer concentrated on solving the error while the lead developer closed the distance with calculated intent. When the confrontation reached its peak, Corvin struck decisively, ensuring that the act could not be interrupted by anyone else. By the time Zephyr was discovered, it was clear the incident had been deliberate. Investigators pieced together the events using surveillance footage, digital logs, and witness accounts. The premeditation became evident. Corvin's manipulation of the lab environment, the timing of the attack, and the isolation of Zephyr were all carefully orchestrated. Every step was designed to create an opportunity for harm, leaving little chance for intervention. Even the positioning of equipment and access to restricted areas was exploited to maximize control over the situation. Forensic analysis confirmed that the encounter was not spontaneous, but carefully engineered with precision and intent. The motive behind the attack reflected a psychological pattern common among those who cannot tolerate perceived threats to their dominance. Corvin's envy, combined with a fragile sense of authority, had escalated over time, culminating in violence. His actions demonstrated how professional rivalry, when left unchecked, can transform a workplace into a setting for lethal confrontation. The lab, once a hub of innovation and collaboration, became a chilling example of how obsession and personal vendettas can override reason, leaving colleagues shocked and investigators piecing together a meticulously planned crime. In the aftermath, Zephyr's colleagues struggled to reconcile the tragedy with the normality of their work environment. The incident prompted internal reviews, stricter security measures, and increased awareness of workplace conflicts. Yet the memory of what had occurred lingered, a haunting reminder that even the most controlled, high-tech workplaces are not immune to human obsession. Zephyr's death became a stark lesson in how ambition, envy, and unchecked hostility can combine in deadly ways, leaving communities and professionals alike to grapple with the fragile line between rivalry and fatal consequences. Nirel Kaith had always been known for her dedication and compassion as a nurse. She moved through the hospital halls with a quiet confidence, ensuring patients received the care they deserved. Her professionalism and keen observation skills made her an invaluable member of the medical team. But behind the sterile walls and routine procedures, danger was quietly brewing. Dr. Kaelen Strivor, a senior physician with a history of misconduct and an inflated sense of authority, had begun to feel threatened by Nirel. Her attention to detail and willingness to report irregularities had exposed him to scrutiny he could not tolerate. In the days leading to the incident, Nirel noticed small but troubling signs. Certain medical supplies went missing, patient charts were mysteriously altered, and colleagues hinted at unusual behavior by Dr. Strivor, though few could put their finger on the severity. Nirel documented each occurrence, creating her own discrete record of the anomalies. Meanwhile, Dr. Strivor monitored her movements with growing suspicion, carefully observing when she interacted with patients, reviewed records, and questioned irregularities in medical procedures. The tension between them intensified as the stakes grew higher, each aware of the other's potential to disrupt or expose hidden truths. On the day of the tragedy, the hospital was unusually quiet in the early morning hours. Nirel moved from patient to patient, completing rounds with her usual efficiency. Dr. Strivor maintained his routine, but his attention was fixed on Nirel, waiting for the perfect opportunity. The conflict between vigilance and concealment escalated in the small, narrow corridors of the hospital. By the afternoon, subtle manipulations began. Medications were misplaced, charts were altered, and procedural steps were obstructed. While these actions appeared minor to most staff, they created a web of confusion designed to isolate Nirel. The critical moment occurred when Nirel entered a rarely used storage area to retrieve medical equipment. Dr. Strivor followed, exploiting the isolation to carry out his plan. Surveillance footage and later forensic analysis confirmed that he had acted with deliberate intent. The confrontation was quick and lethal, leaving Nirel unable to defend herself. When her body was discovered, the hospital staff was shocked. What had seemed like a routine workday had turned into a scene of calculated violence. The evidence pointed to premeditation, Dr. Stravor's manipulation of the environment, the timing of the attack, and the isolation of Nirel were all carefully orchestrated. Every step was designed to create an opportunity for harm, leaving little chance for intervention. Even the positioning of equipment and access to restricted areas was exploited to maximize control over the situation. Forensic analysis confirmed that the encounter was not spontaneous, but carefully engineered with precision and intent. The motive behind the attack reflected a psychological pattern common among those who cannot tolerate perceived threats to their dominance. Dr. Stravor's envy combined with a fragile sense of authority had escalated over time, culminating in violence. His actions demonstrated how professional rivalry, when left unchecked, can transform a workplace into a setting for lethal confrontation. The hospital, once a hub of care and safety, became a chilling example of how obsession and personal vendettas can override reason, leaving communities and professionals alike to grapple with the fragile line between rivalry and fatal consequences.
After the fifth shocking incident, investigators and workplace safety experts began noticing patterns that went beyond individual motives. The stories of Kaelen Strivor, Brenna Korr, Saphira Lonett, Zephyr Ardan, and Nirel Kaith, while seemingly isolated, shared subtle similarities that revealed a broader truth about human behavior in professional environments. Each victim had been talented, diligent, and committed to their work, yet each had encountered colleagues whose jealousy, fear, or desire for control escalated into deadly action. The sixth chapter of the documentary focuses not on a single murder, but on the invisible forces that allowed these tragedies to unfold. In offices, factories, labs, and hospitals, the pressures of ambition and authority can amplify small conflicts. Investigators found that the perpetrators had all operated within structured environments where rules existed but oversight was limited. They exploited these gaps, knowing that minor manipulations could go unnoticed until it was too late. In every case, the killer had studied their target's routines, learned the nuances of their behavior, and used the workplace itself as a tool to isolate and control the victim. Whether it was manipulating machinery, altering documents, or exploiting moments of solitude, the professional setting provided both opportunity and cover for lethal intentions. Psychologists analyzing the cases noted a recurring pattern in the killer's personalities. A fragile ego combined with the need for control and an inability to tolerate perceived threats created a volatile mix. In the office and corporate environments, Marlo Vane and Quillen Ray were driven by envy and fear of exposure. In the factory and tech lab, Daxon Vire and Corvin Jacks acted out of resentment and a desire to maintain dominance. In the hospital, Dr. Valen Drass's actions reflected a dangerous sense of entitlement and a willingness to eliminate anyone who could challenge his authority. Each killer had rationalized their actions in a way that made the act seem, to them, almost justified. The investigative teams also found that warning signs had been present but were often overlooked. Colleagues had noticed unusual behavior, lingering stares, subtle manipulations, and minor disruptions that did not make sense in isolation. Yet, in fast-paced professional environments, these signs were dismissed as stress, personality quirks, or office politics. The tragic outcomes illustrated how small, unchecked behaviors could escalate when combined with obsession or fear. Patterns of intimidation, subtle harassment, and control were clear in hindsight, but they had gone unaddressed until it was too late. The documentation of these cases revealed another layer: the critical role of witnesses and careful observation. Leora Dex, Torrin Hale, Morel Tubb, Illyra Sun, and Tressa Vaughn had all noticed anomalies, recorded details, and eventually provided testimony that became crucial for solving the murders. Their vigilance highlighted how important awareness and documentation are in detecting escalating threats. Each witness contributed pieces of a larger puzzle, demonstrating that while workplaces can conceal danger, attentive individuals can be the key to uncovering the truth before tragedy strikes. In reflecting on these 5 cases collectively, patterns of premeditation, manipulation, and exploitation of workplace dynamics became apparent. While the stories spanned different industries and settings, the lessons were universal. Ambition, envy, and the need for control, when combined with access to victims and minimal oversight, created the conditions for violence. Organizations that failed to recognize and address these dynamics unknowingly enabled killers to act. These cases were not just stories of individual malice, they were a warning about how human psychology, professional hierarchy, and unchecked tension can converge in lethal ways. By the end of the chapter, the audience is left to consider the unsettling reality. Workplaces, no matter how structured or professional, are not immune to danger. Talent and diligence do not provide immunity, and while the perpetrators varied in motive and method, the circumstances that allowed these crimes to occur shared striking similarities. Understanding these patterns is essential not only for justice, but for preventing future tragedies. Awareness, vigilance, and the courage to act on warning signs are the only defenses against the quiet escalation of deadly intent that can hide behind the everyday routines of work life. As the investigation into the 5 workplace murders deepened, authorities began to examine the environments in which these crimes had occurred, seeking to understand how ordinary settings could become stages for extraordinary violence. Each case revealed the hidden pressures that simmer beneath the surface of professional life. Ambition, jealousy, resentment, and fear all intertwined with opportunity. The patterns were striking. The killers had all exploited their positions, using knowledge of routines, hierarchies, and procedural gaps to isolate and ultimately eliminate their targets. What initially appeared as isolated tragedies began to reveal a chilling common thread. In offices like Kaelen Strivor's and Saphira Lonett's, the power of authority and recognition played a critical role. Marlo Vane and Quillen Ray had acted with extreme calculation, using subtle sabotage and manipulation to gain control over their victims' environments. The investigation uncovered emails, access logs, and minute details in schedules that proved premeditation. These killers had studied every interaction, every pattern, and every moment of vulnerability, exploiting them with surgical precision. Their workplaces, designed to facilitate collaboration and productivity, had become instruments of control and ultimately of death. Factories and labs, seemingly governed by rules and protocols, offered different kinds of opportunities. Daxon Vire and Corvin Jacks knew the systems intimately. They understood that even minor disruptions could escalate into catastrophic consequences. By subtly manipulating equipment, altering settings, or creating distractions, they engineered fatal outcomes while maintaining the illusion of routine operations. Investigators noted that their technical knowledge and access were crucial factors, turning environments intended for creation and production into lethal traps. The victims' skill and diligence only highlighted the perpetrator's envy, amplifying the sense of justification in their own minds. Hospitals, places meant for care and healing, revealed yet another dimension of vulnerability. Dr. Valen Drass's actions were a stark reminder that authority and trust can be weaponized. Nirel Kaith's attentiveness and insistence on integrity made her a threat to someone who believed their power should go unquestioned. The careful orchestration of patient rounds, isolation of spaces, and subtle manipulation of protocols underscored a chilling reality that even the most regulated environments can conceal lethal intent when oversight fails and ambition morphs into obsession. Psychologists and workplace experts reviewing these cases highlighted a disturbing pattern of personality traits among the perpetrators: fragile egos, obsession with control, and an inability to tolerate perceived threats. Each killer exhibited behaviors that in isolation might have seemed harmless or merely eccentric, but when combined with access, opportunity, and the workplace's built-in hierarchies, the results were deadly. The investigation emphasized that recognizing these early warning signs is critical. Unchecked envy, manipulative behavior, and small acts of harassment can escalate in ways no one anticipates until tragedy strikes. The collective impact of these cases also underscored the importance of vigilance from colleagues. Leora Dex, Torin Hale, Maral Tove, Elira Sun, and Tressa Vaughn had all noticed irregularities, subtle manipulations, and patterns of escalation. Their attention and documentation became central to reconstructing the events. Without witnesses who cared enough to observe, record, and report anomalies, the killer's methods might have remained hidden, allowing them to act with impunity. These cases highlighted how even small acts of awareness and intervention can be critical in preventing or solving crimes. By the conclusion of this chapter, the audience is left to confront a sobering reality. Workplaces, no matter how structured or professional, are not immune to danger. Talent and diligence do not provide immunity, and while the perpetrators varied in motive and method, The circumstances that allowed these crimes to occur shared striking similarities. Understanding these patterns is essential, not only for justice, but for preventing future tragedies. Awareness, vigilance, and the courage to act on warning signs are the only defenses against the quiet escalation of deadly intent that can hide behind the everyday routines of work life.
As the 5 workplace murders were examined side by side, investigators and experts began to uncover deeper systemic issues that allowed these tragedies to occur. Beyond the individual motives of envy, obsession, and fear, there were common environmental factors that had gone largely unnoticed. Each workplace, whether an office, factory, lab, or hospital, contained structural weaknesses that could be exploited by someone with a hidden agenda. The killers had leveraged these gaps with careful planning, demonstrating that danger often lurks not in overt conflicts, but in subtle, everyday vulnerabilities. In corporate environments like those of Kaelen Strivor and Saphira Lonett, the combination of hierarchical structures and competitive pressure created a fertile ground for manipulation. Marlo Vane and Quillen Ray understood the nuances of authority, workflow, and access. They used these insights to isolate their victims, intercept communication, and control the flow of information. The investigators noted that minor disruptions, emails going unanswered, misfiled documents, and manipulated schedules were all part of a deliberate strategy to disorient the targets, creating openings for deadly actions. The very systems meant to ensure efficiency and accountability became instruments of harm. In industrial and technical settings, such as the factory where Brenna Korr worked and the lab where Zephyr Ardan was targeted, the environment itself amplified the threat. Machines, software systems, and complex workflows offered opportunities to create accidents that could be misinterpreted as mistakes. Daxon Vire and Corvin Jacks exploited these tools with terrifying precision. Small adjustments, intentional delays, and strategic distractions transformed routine operations into lethal traps. The investigation revealed that technical knowledge combined with authority and patience could make workplace violence nearly invisible until it was too late to intervene. Hospitals presented a unique form of vulnerability. Dr. Valen Dress manipulated procedures, patient interactions, and access to isolated spaces to conceal his intent. Nirel Kaith's role as a nurse, dedicated to observing anomalies and advocating for patient safety, made her a threat in his eyes. The crime highlighted how authority can be weaponized, with the guise of professional responsibility masking predatory behavior. Even in environments with strict protocols and surveillance, a single individual with knowledge and intent could circumvent safeguards, demonstrating that vigilance is essential at every level. Psychologists studying the perpetrators emphasized that the combination of personality traits and situational advantage was crucial. Fragile egos, obsession, envy, and a need for control were present in each case, but they alone were insufficient to trigger violence. The workplace provided the tools, timing, and access needed to turn intention into action. The interplay between individual pathology and environmental opportunity created a perfect storm. Without structural vulnerabilities, the obsession and envy may have remained contained, never resulting in murder. Witnesses in each story played a critical role in revealing the truth. Leora Dex, Torrin Hale, Mirel Tove, Alira Sun, and Tressa Vaughn had observed anomalies, noted irregularities, and provided crucial testimony. Their vigilance turned seemingly minor details, misplaced files, altered schedules, and unusual machine behavior into pivotal evidence. The investigation underscored that attentive colleagues could be the difference between a life cut short and a tragedy prevented. Awareness and action, even in subtle forms, are essential defenses against calculated threats. As a chapter concluded, a sobering pattern emerged. Ambition, jealousy, and fear could escalate into lethal outcomes when paired with opportunity and unchecked authority. Workplaces, no matter how structured, were vulnerable to manipulation by individuals who understood the systems and sought to exploit them. The lessons were clear. Vigilance, observation, and structural safeguards are not optional, they are essential. The stories of these 5 victims became a chilling reminder that danger often hides behind ordinary routines, waiting for a calculated moment to strike, and that recognizing the warning signs before it is too late can save lives. By the time investigators had fully examined the 5 workplace murders, a haunting pattern had emerged. While each case was unique, the stories of Kaelen Strivor, Brenna Korr, Saphira Lonett, Zephyr Ardan, and Nirel Kaith revealed a common truth. Ordinary workplaces can conceal extraordinary danger. Each victim had excelled in their profession, maintained integrity, and approached their duties with dedication. Yet their excellence drew the attention of colleagues who felt threatened, and in each instance, envy, obsession, and ambition escalated into lethal action. The culmination of these events left communities and investigators alike grappling with a chilling reality. Analysis revealed that the perpetrators had all relied on opportunity and access, exploiting the systems and structures of their workplaces. Offices, factories, labs, and hospitals provided tools and routines that could be manipulated to isolate targets and conceal intent. From subtle sabotage and minor procedural disruptions to strategic timing and environmental manipulation, the killers had converted ordinary professional spaces into arenas of control. Their methods were calculated, precise, and tailored to exploit the vulnerabilities inherent in everyday work life, demonstrating that even structured environments are not immune to danger. Psychologists studying these crimes emphasized that personality traits alone did not account for the outcomes. Fragile egos, obsession, and a need for control were present in each perpetrator, but without access, opportunity, and knowledge of routines, their intentions might never have manifested in violence. The combination of psychological vulnerability and environmental advantage created a deadly synergy. The workplace, when infiltrated by manipulation and resentment, transformed into a stage where ambition, fear, and obsession could converge with lethal results. Witnesses played a pivotal role in uncovering the truth behind these murders. Leora Dex, Torin Hale, Morel Tove, Alira Sun, and Tressa Vaughn had all noticed irregularities, from minor inconsistencies in documentation to subtle acts of sabotage and intimidation. Their observations became critical in reconstructing the events, highlighting the importance of vigilance and careful attention to detail. In each case, the small acts of awareness and documentation by bystanders ultimately helped investigators piece together a sequence of events that might have otherwise remained shrouded in ambiguity. The broader lesson of these cases is as sobering as it is vital. Workplace violence often begins quietly, with subtle manipulations, minor disruptions, and unchecked rivalries. What appears to be normal office politics, professional competition, or routine disagreement can escalate when paired with personal obsession, fear, or envy. Early warning signs, if noticed and acted upon, can prevent escalation. These stories serve as a stark reminder that vigilance, reporting, and accountability are essential to protect both employees and institutions from catastrophic consequences. In reflecting on the impact of these 5 murders, one realization stands out. Talent, dedication, and integrity, while admirable, do not guarantee safety. Those who threaten these qualities may act in ways that are calculated, patient, and almost invisible until the moment of attack. Organizations must recognize the potential for abuse of authority, address behavioral red flags, and implement measures to protect employees.
The tragic outcomes of these 5 murders underscore the fragile balance between professional success and personal danger, illustrating how quickly ordinary environments can turn deadly when human emotion and opportunity intersect. Ultimately, the stories of Kaelen, Brenna, Saphira, Zephyr, and Nirel leave an unsettling impression. Their deaths were not the result of chance, but of carefully orchestrated violence driven by envy, fear, and the desire for control. The lessons from these workplace murders are clear. Awareness, vigilance, and proactive intervention are the only defenses against hidden threats. As viewers reflect on these chilling stories, the underlying question remains: how often do ordinary routines hide extraordinary danger? And how can one recognize the warning signs before it is too late? The answer, painfully, lies in the delicate balance between human ambition and the shadows that can grow alongside it.
Lessons learned and the haunting legacy left by the 5 workplace murders. In each story, investigators, colleagues, and communities were forced to confront the stark reality that danger often hides behind the routines and facades of everyday professional life. The deaths of Kaelen Strivor, Brenna Korr, Saphira Lonett, Zephyr Ardan, and Nirel Kaith were more than individual tragedies. They revealed systemic vulnerabilities, human fragility, and the devastating consequences of unchecked ambition, obsession, and resentment. In offices, the aftermath prompted organizations to reevaluate hierarchical structures and oversight procedures. Management learned that authority, when unchecked, can be weaponized. Marlo Vane and Quillen Ray had exploited minor gaps in supervision to manipulate their victims, turning professional environments into personal arenas of control. Investigators emphasized that a culture of transparency, reporting mechanisms, and peer accountability could have prevented escalation. The losses were not only human, but organizational. Morale suffered, trust eroded, and employees were left questioning the safety of workplaces they had once considered secure. In industrial and technical settings, the deaths of Brenna Korr and Zephyr Ardan highlighted the dangers of environments with powerful machinery or complex systems. Technical expertise, when combined with personal vendettas, could transform routine operations into instruments of death. Safety protocols were revisited, and colleagues became painfully aware that minor manipulations, unnoticed deviations, or small errors could have catastrophic consequences. Workplace training expanded to include not only operational safety, but also awareness of behavioral warning signs, emphasizing that vigilance extends beyond physical hazards to include human intent. Hospitals, meant to be sanctuaries of care, faced unique challenges. Dr. Valen Drass's calculated actions against Nirel Kaith exposed the vulnerability of even the most regulated environments. Patient safety, procedural integrity, and staff accountability became central concerns. Policies were updated to prevent abuse of authority, improve monitoring, and encourage reporting of unusual behavior. Staff were reminded that compassion and diligence, while critical to patient care, could inadvertently draw attention from individuals willing to exploit dedication for personal gain. Across all workplaces, investigators identified recurring patterns that had facilitated these crimes: subtle sabotage, isolation of targets, careful observation of routines, and exploitation of environmental gaps. Psychological analysis revealed that envy, obsession, and fear had escalated into lethal intent when combined with opportunity and access. These insights became essential for training programs, risk assessments, and organizational policies, providing a blueprint for preventing future tragedies. The stories collectively emphasize the importance of recognizing early warning signs, documenting suspicious behavior, and taking proactive action to protect potential victims. Perhaps most importantly, the human element of witness observation emerged as a critical factor. Leora Dex, Torin Hala, Morel Tove, Alira Sun, and Tressa Vaughn had all played critical roles in piecing together events.
Their attentiveness transformed ordinary observations into crucial evidence, underscoring the idea that vigilance, courage, and moral responsibility can make the difference between life and death. Without their contributions, the full extent of the perpetrator's planning might never have been revealed. As the documentary concludes, viewers are left with the sobering reflection: workplaces, regardless of industry or structure, are not immune to hidden danger. Ambition, jealousy, obsession, and fear can fester quietly, often unnoticed, until they culminate in irreversible outcomes. Awareness, vigilance, and proactive intervention are essential defenses. The chilling stories of Kaelen, Brenna, Saphira, Zephyr, and Nirel Kaith remind us that ordinary routines can conceal extraordinary threats, and the most diligent, talented, and dedicated employees are not always safe from the shadows that lurk alongside human ambition.